Can we please sit down and have respect for our speakers, please? Thank you. I'm going to let Reza Pankhurst rebuttal, and I want to remind you of the question: how can we please have respect for our panelists? Thank you.
I think that Ahmed is very nice and very good at trying to provoke the audience here. So, you know, I'm sure that you're all too mature to be provoked by these kind of theatrics. Obviously, this is some kind of, I say it frankly, this is an action which is completely outside the fold of Islam, to start bowing down to anyone other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know that. But anyway, I'm not going to make that into the point of the discussion. I agree with Ahmed on his point that when the Libyan people were betrayed, yes, they were betrayed. They were betrayed by who? They were betrayed by, for example, the Egyptian regime. Absolutely. Because the Egyptian people, believe me, they would have been happy to go and fight on the side of the Libyans. Absolutely. Even this whole border between Libya and Egypt, it's artificial. Because there's a tribe which lives one half on the Libyan side, one half on the Egyptian side. There's no difference between the people. The Egyptian people would have loved to have gone and liberated them from Gaddafi. But the old regime, which is still in charge with Mohammed Tantawi at its head, did do nothing. So they betrayed them. So when you're betrayed and you're facing your death, you will take help from the devil. Exactly. This is true. Absolutely. But where I disagree with Ahmed Shebani is that once it's over, you don't go to the devil and ask him, please help me organize my government. Now, the United Nations is not the devil. The United Nations no. Okay, United Nations track record with Libya. Let's just remind ourselves. The United Nations Human Rights Commission was led by Gaddafi for a period of time. I know, it's disgrace. It is disgrace. This is the point. United Nations imposed the American-led sanctions on Iraq, leading to the death of more than 1 million Iraqi children. Yes? So, United Nations troops were responsible for the slaughter inside Srebrenica and not intervening. That's been seen. The Dutch leader has been, accounted for that. There's been no real accounting, but it's been exposed. If we go to the history of the United Nations, which was set up post-World War II by the Americans to manage their geopolitical interests, we will not find a sparkling, neutral history that we can then say, let's turn to United Nations to help us out. This is the issue. To go, look, Ahmed, you said already, when you said... Okay, who shall build democracy for us? When you said, I don't want democracy to be built there. Democracy is a failed ideology. I made that very clear. When you mentioned Islamic secular democracy, you said that you put the word Islamic there simply because the people in Libya expect it.
I'll give each of you enough time to speak.
You said that you said Islamic because the people there expect it. This is a kind of trickery. Call yourself Muslim, fine. Say secular Muslim democracy. Don't call it Islamic. When everyone who studies Islam closely will know there's no such thing as secularism in Islam. Secularism is a Western concept derived by a struggle between the church and the state. If you talk about the Maliki school of thought, I would like to refer you to Ibn Rushd. I would like to refer you to Imam Malik's Muwatta. I would like to refer you to all of these books and to please see how many political, judicial issues are written inside these books regarding punishment for those people who steal, regarding the issue of jihad and foreign policy. All of these are detailed inside the books. Don't say that Maliki scholarship is somehow secular. This is not true whatsoever. Regarding the question which was raised, because I have to address the question, which was secularism versus Islam. No, secularism versus Islam. The reality is, the regimes which have been rebelled against were all secular. That's the reality. Yes, they were backed by the government scholars, because the government scholars, they take their pay from the government and therefore they come out and say whatever the government wants. That's why you still see the same government scholars still coming out and saying the same thing for the new masters. Whatever the new masters want, they come out. That's why we don't pay attention to what Sheikh Al-Azhar says or to what the head of the letter inside Saudi Arabia says. Exactly. However, there are many other Islamic scholars, true Islamic scholars out there, and I would consider someone like Sadiq Al-Ghariyani to be one of those independent-minded people, but there are many, many others who come out and say the word of truth in the time when it's most difficult to say that word of truth. The reality, as I said, secularism is what has been there for years. Secularism is one of the reasons why America backed all of these regimes inside the area in order to prevent any Islam. The political legitimacy given to them in the international arena for regimes such as Mubarak, or for regimes such as Gaddafi, or for regimes such as Ben Ali is, if it's not us, it's going to be the Muslims. It's going to be those who want Islam. That's, especially after 2001. So if we look at the history, we see that the people have rebelled against secularism. Now, if we look at the history, we see Islam had a history. It had a history. Not only a history, it's actually a bright history. The history of Andalusia, the history of Baghdad, the history of learning, the history of universities, the history of justice, the history of Jews running to the Islamic State when the issue was when the attacks were coming inside, the Inquisition was in Spain and so on and so forth. And today we don't want to return even to those examples. We're saying return back to the example of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, who definitely was not a secularist. And he was definitely applying and ruling by Islam, as is clear from the Quran and from the Sunnah. And he was warned not to follow people's desires, nor his own desires actually, but to follow only what was revealed to him by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
I came with a very open mind towards Libyan Democratic Party, but you have clearly shown me that you have no clear strategic plan for Libya or for the region, to speak in the broader sense. And also, I think what I can see from studying the reality on the ground for many of the journalists and all the rest of it, you can see very clearly that democracy or secularism actually has failed miserably. And many non-Muslims even don't believe in that idea anymore. My question, that's why I don't really have any questions for you. My question is to you, Brother Reza. What is your future plan for the region? Can you give me a clear, very clear vision for the Middle East? Because the people there are very clearly calling for Islam, and that's why you had to use Islamic secularism and all the rest of the terms. Because many of the Islamic organisations which are in the region, they don't necessarily give a clear strategic solution for the region in terms of its political entity. So if you could just give me a clear idea of what is the future for the region from Islam, inshallah.
Let's take one more question.
My question is to Ahmed Shebani. I feel personally that you haven't addressed the question, the critical question is that not to address Muslims, to address Islam, Khalifa in the state, that if the democracy is for the people, by the people, yes, and Islam, Shariah, is for the people, by Allah, and no human being has a say of what Allah says yes or no, then how can those two coincide, and how can we choose something over the rule of Allah?
I was going to say, for more than 1,000 years, we've seen the Middle East and the Islamic region has been ruled by one rule, and that is the rule of Allah under the Caliphate. What makes you think there's any other system that can rule these people?
Can you answer the first question about is democracy and Islam compatible?
I just want to refer to the comments that the sister made at the back. I have placed the flag here for a purpose. We, the cyber rebels in Libya, we see ourselves in a similar fashion to the young Turks. If you notice our political logo on the website, we have engineered by taking the crescent and the star, which is the symbol of Islam, and we've put it in the red color, which means to go forward, we need to follow the European, where we need to make separation between the church and the state. We would like to build a Turkish model. The most successful Islamic country is not Somalia, it's Turkey. So that's why we have shifted the crescent to the red. Okay? And that's our opinion. We have a clear vision, and we will make sure that our vision takes supremacy. We work at grassroots level and we work bottom up. Thank you.
Would you be imposing that on the people then? Would you be...
Definitely not. We respect the decision of the ballot box. We shall do the counting.
I'll try and be brief. I mentioned the aspirations of the people fell underneath four in my presentation. I said they want independence, geopolitical and national independence. They want unity. Yes, they want liberation, i.e. the liberation of Palestine and other occupied lands, and they're looking for the Islamic alternative. The current solutions in place, i.e. the current electoral systems in place, are not going to provide them the answers to these questions. With all respect to the Islamic movements that are running for government inside Egypt, Egypt is a very good case study. You have the Muslim Brotherhood and the Noor Party, both of them running, and both of them have scored very high marks. However, there is no way that they will ever be allowed to establish an Islamic system in that country. This is very clear. The SCAF have made it very clear. Muslim Brotherhood have felt pressure to the point where they've made it clear they won't even try to establish an Islamic system inside the country. And so all these electoral systems are, at the moment, whoever's running for them, is simply about changing the faces and not changing the basis of the rule. Our vision for the Middle East, i.e. the vision of Hizb Tahrir and other movements who are seeking the Khilafah system, is for a reversal. The only way you're going to have true liberation is to go back and reverse the Sykes-Picot, actually. Sykes-Picot is the imposition of the false borders and the false nationalism upon those people of the region, yes, which occurred after World War I. This fake division between Libya, between Tunisia, between Egypt, between Syria, we've seen how it actually leads to such problems today. It's leading to the denial of help of brother with brother when they're being slaughtered. Yeah? And this is as a result of the Sykes-Picot, and people until now they're still fixated by these imaginary borders which are drawn up for them by the British and the French. They did not come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or the United Nations even. They did not come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they did not come from their religion, they did not come from their own heritage or history even. They were drawn quite arbitrarily. No one can tell me that Kuwait or Qatar or Tunisia or any of these things are really valid countries in the real meaning of the word as they emerged outside of Europe. So we're looking for a reversal of that. One state for the Muslim lands, which is based upon Islam, and the ruling would be according to Islam, so that means the system would be removed from its roots. The constitution itself would be derived from the Quran and Sunnah, and all of the people who chose to live there, whether Muslims or otherwise, would be judged by the rule of law, which would be defined by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and ijtihad based upon that by whoever's inside the ruling. And this would be the standard, rather than the whims of the majority. You see, the whims of the majority ends up with people being oppressed at different times. Rather, there's a fixed standard. If people like it, they can live there. If they dislike it, they can. So we have that vision for the region, and frankly speaking, the only way we have independence from the West, the only way you have liberation of Palestine, the only way you have unity, which all the people of the region want, is to return back to that Khilafah system, which actually came from Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam, and he mentioned inside many narrations that there would be Khilafah upon the manhaj, there would be Khilafah system upon the methodology of the prophethood returning again in the future. So this is, I mean, there are many details in terms of economics, in terms of foreign policy, in terms of these issues, but this is not the kind of debate for that kind of discussion. It would only be very superficial examples. But this is the basis of the rule. It's a fundamentally changing the whole system which the world is organized at the moment.
Thank you. He answered the question.
Do you get more questions than answers?
Yes. One more question. Yes.
You were actually clamoring for democracy for people of Libya, right? And of course, from what we've seen all around, we've not really seen where democracy, in any part of the world, where democracy is working perfectly.
Yes.
And of course, you might want to say that you've not seen where Islamic government is working perfectly, and of course, we don't even have that right now. The only government in history where poverty is eradicated completely is during Islamic ruling, Islamic government. Maybe Umar bin Abdulaziz, if you have heard of that before. And many examples of that. So, and I want to ask you, from what is said, and of course, what we saw after Gaddafi was overthrown, that people of Libya were actually clamoring for Islamic government. They want Islam to rule them, not any other thing. So, how would you now impose this kind of government or this kind of ideology on people who don't want it? So, don't you think there's going to be conflict, there's going to be a problem? So, I want you to answer that, please.
Green talk.
Assalamu alaikum. Just want to make three very, very brief points. The first one is your NATO analogy about the shield. I just want to draw a comparison to Hajjaj bin Yusuf with that. If you know about Hajjaj bin Yusuf, a very oppressive guy, when he was young, and the story is attributed to him, that when he was young, a boy was drowning, and he went and he saved that boy from drowning, and he said to him that I saved you from drowning because if you drowned, you would have been a martyr and you would have gone straight to heaven. So, by doing this nice thing for him, he wanted to do something bad for him in the future. Similar thing with NATO is how I saw it. Again, what I heard when you said Islamic secularism, the first thing that came into my mind is like you're saying halal bacon, or saying that halal zina, or whatever it might be, because the two words, they do not go together. And the third point I want to make is I'm very offended by the way you've treated the chair. And I hope whether you privately or publicly, seeing as you offended him publicly, if you were to apologize to him, that would be very nice, because I myself, by accusing him...
Excuse me. We have a debate. Those who choose not to believe in Hizb al-Muhajirun or Hizb al-Tahrir, that is their prerogative, that's their choice. From my university time, I know that the only society that does brain damage and make people go brain dead is Hizb al-Muhajirun and Hizb al-Tahrir. So you have to respect that, okay? And respect my choice. The second thing is that if we call for the establishment of democracy, does this mean we are not Muslims? We're saying it is Islamic secular democracy. And then the brother at the back who's saying that there is no system where democracy has succeeded. Yes, we're saying that democracy is a human process. The good thing about it, it's self-adjusting. From Cromwell time to here, it took about 300 years. If you did not enjoy democracy, then why are you here? We have to accept the only way for us to come out from the dark ages is to make a separation between the mosque and the state. And I need... Now, تفضل. Okay, coming back to NATO. Do you think we are gullible people? Of course, we know NATO why they came. They came because of our oil. The Syrians are being slaughtered like rats and mice and cockroaches and nobody doing anything. So Churchill said, in politics, there is no permanent enemy, there is no permanent friend. It's permanent interest. And we are going to exploit the situation advantageously to build Islamic democracy. We are not going to miss the chance. And sorry, we don't want Khilafah because we do not want to compromise on our national integrity and on our sovereignty. We don't want to be suddenly amalgamated with 80 millions from Egypt or 30 millions from Algeria or any of that nonsense. We are a small nation, we are a nation of 6 million. We want to do capacity building and we want to build our country on our own with the help of United Nations and those who want to seek and become joint partnership, not compromising on our territorial integrity whatsoever.
Thank you very much. Excuse me, I'm the chair, yeah? So good to know. Can I get one last question on Western interference, please? Okay.